One second, you feel safe. And then,
The police are on their way.
well, you still do.
The scotch burned going down, but not as much as the truth I'd been swallowing for months. 3 a.m. again, and Melissa wasn't home. Again. I sat in my kitchen listening to the drip of that goddamn faucet I'd been meaning to fix, wondering when exactly my wife stopped pretending to love me. The house felt hollow, like everything good had been sucked out through the walls, leaving behind only the skeleton of what we used to be. My name's Rick Sullivan. 43 years old, owner of Sullivan Home Renovations, former Golden Gloves boxer back when my knees didn't creak and my gut didn't hang over my belt. I built this business from nothing, same way I built this marriage. Brick by brick, nail by nail, thinking if I worked hard enough, loved hard enough, it would last forever. Turns out I was wrong about a lot of things. The front door opened with that soft click Melissa had perfected, the sound of someone trying not to wake a sleeping husband. I stayed in the kitchen, nursing my drink, watching her reflection in the window as she tiptoed past. She smelled different. Not just the obvious cologne that wasn't mine, but something else. Guilt, maybe, or excitement. Hard to tell the difference anymore. "Rick, you awake?" Her voice carried that fake concern she'd been using lately, like she was reading lines from a script. "Just fixing the sink," I called back, not turning around. "You know how it is. Some things need attention at 3 in the morning." She appeared in the doorway, still in her gym clothes. Melissa worked as a fitness instructor and PR director at Elite Fitness Center, one of those glass and chrome places where rich people paid premium prices to sweat next to other rich people. She looked good, better than she had in years, actually. New haircut, expensive workout gear, that glow people get when they're living their best life. Just not with me. "Sorry I'm late. Had to finish inventory with Derek." Derek Morrison, her boss. Married guy, late 40s, drove a BMW, and wore suits that cost more than most people's rent. You know how these corporate types are about their numbers. I knew Derek all right, met him at the company Christmas party last year. Firm handshake, fake smile, the kind of guy who called everyone champ and meant it as an insult. The kind of guy who'd sleep with his employee's wife and justify it as a business decision. "Sure," I said, finally turning to look at her. "Numbers are important." Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, that I wasn't pushing for details. She'd been expecting questions, prepared answers. My silence threw her off balance. "I'm exhausted," she said, already moving toward the stairs. "See you in the morning." "Maybe. Got an early job in Riverside, kitchen renovation." She paused on the first step. "You've been taking a lot of early jobs lately." "Business is good. People want their homes fixed." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. After she disappeared upstairs, I sat there for another hour, listening to the shower run, then the hairdryer, then finally silence. All that cleanup for a husband who was supposedly asleep. All that effort to wash away evidence of whatever she'd been doing, or whoever she'd been doing it with. The next morning, Melissa left her phone on the kitchen counter while she showered. She'd been careful about that lately, never leaving it unattended, always keeping it face down. But everyone makes mistakes when they're comfortable, when they think their husband is too stupid to notice. I almost didn't look. Part of me wanted to keep living in the fantasy, pretending everything was fine, that we were just going through a rough patch like every marriage does. But that scotch-soaked part of my brain, the part that remembered what it felt like to fight, to hit back when someone hit you, that part reached for the phone. No password. She'd removed it weeks ago, probably figured I was too trusting to snoop. The messages were right there on the lock screen. Derek. Can't wait to see you tonight. Same place. Matt. Your husband suspect anything? LOL. Matt. The trainer who lived 3 houses down from us. The guy who waved when he saw me mowing the lawn, who borrowed my jumper cables last winter, who I'd helped move furniture when he first moved to the neighborhood. The guy who'd been screwing my wife. I scrolled through the messages, my hands surprisingly steady. Months of conversations, hotel receipts sent as photos, explicit messages that made my stomach turn. And the worst part, the jokes. About me. About how clueless I was, how easy it was to fool me, how I was too busy fixing sinks to notice what needed fixing. There were photos, too. Melissa with Derek at some upscale restaurant. Melissa with Matt at what looked like his apartment. Melissa with both of them at different times, different places, living a whole other life I knew nothing about. The shower was still running upstairs. I forwarded the most damning messages to my own phone, deleted the evidence from her sent folder, and put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. Then I sat down and finished my coffee like nothing had happened. Melissa came downstairs 20 minutes later, looking fresh and beautiful and completely unaware that her world had just shifted on its axis. She kissed my cheek, a dry, perfunctory peck that felt more like a business transaction than affection. "Have a good day," she said, grabbing her phone and gym bag. "You too," I replied. "Hope your numbers work out." She gave me a strange look but didn't ask what I meant. The door closed behind her, and I was alone with the truth. My wife was cheating on me, with 2 different men, had been for months, maybe longer, and they were all having a good laugh about what a fool I was. I poured another cup of coffee and started planning. See, here's what Melissa and her boyfriends didn't know about me. I hadn't always been a mild-mannered contractor who fixed sinks and installed cabinets. Before I started Sullivan Home Renovations, before I met Melissa, before I became the suburban husband who mowed his lawn every Saturday and waved at the neighbors, I was someone else. I was a fighter. Not just in the ring, though I'd done plenty of that. I grew up in South Boston, where you learned early that the world was divided into 2 types of people, those who hit first and those who got hit. I'd spent my 20s bouncing at bars, collecting debts for guys who didn't like to ask twice, living in a world where respect was earned with your fists and your word was your bond. I'd left that life behind when I met Melissa. Thought I was trading up, becoming a better man, building something clean and honest and good. Thought she wanted a husband, not a warrior. Turns out I was wrong about that too. But here's the thing about old skills. They don't disappear. They just go dormant, waiting for the right moment to resurface. And as I sat in my kitchen that morning, looking at the evidence of my wife's betrayal, I felt those old instincts stirring. The fighter was waking up. I didn't confront Melissa that night, or the next night, or the night after that. Instead, I became a student of my wife's lies. I started paying attention to details I'd been ignoring for months. The way she checked her phone constantly but tilted it away from me. How she'd started working late 3 nights a week, always with a different excuse. The new lingerie I never got to see her wear. The gym membership she'd upgraded to include personal training sessions and executive wellness consultations. All of it made sense now. I called my old friend, Jules Kowalski, who tended bar at the Rusty Anchor, a dive on the wrong side of town where cops and construction workers went to forget their problems. Jules was ex-Boston PD, retired early after a bullet in the shoulder and too many years of seeing the worst in people. He had skills I needed and a flexible moral code when it came to cheating spouses. "You sure you want to go down this road, Rick?" Jules asked when I laid out the situation. We were sitting in his bar after closing time, the neon beer signs casting colored shadows on the worn wooden floor. Sometimes ignorance is bliss. "Ignorance is what got me here," I said, nursing a beer I didn't really want. "She's been making a fool of me for months, Jules. Her and her 2 boyfriends laughing about how stupid I am." Jules whistled low. "2 guys? Jesus, Rick, that's cold." "Derek Morrison, her boss at the gym. Married guy, drives a blue BMW, lives in Millbrook Heights. And Matt Hendricks, personal trainer, lives 3 houses down from me on Maple Street. The neighbor," That's really cold. I need to know everything, Jules. How long it's been going on, where they meet, what they're planning. Can you help me or not? Jules was quiet for a long moment, studying his beer like it held the secrets of the universe. Finally, he nodded. Yeah, I can help. But Rick, when this is over, when you know everything, what then? You gonna divorce her? Beat the shit out of these guys? What's the end game? I'd been asking myself the same question for days. The old Rick would have handled this with his fists, no questions asked. But I wasn't that guy anymore. I was a businessman, a homeowner, a pillar of the goddamn community. I had a reputation to protect, a business to run, but I also had a score to settle. I don't know yet, I told Jules, but I'll figure something out. The next week, Jules and I became private investigators. He had contacts in all the right places. Security guards who could access parking garage footage, bartenders who remembered faces, hotel clerks who could be persuaded to share information for the right price. The picture that emerged was even worse than I'd imagined. Melissa and Derek had been meeting twice a week for the past 4 months, always at the Grandview Hotel downtown. They had a regular room, 412, booked under Derek's company account as client consultations. The hotel staff knew them by sight, thought they were a married couple having affair rekindling getaways. Melissa and Matt were more casual but more frequent. His apartment, her car, even our house when I was out on jobs. The neighbor across the street, Mrs. Patterson, had seen Matt's motorcycle in our driveway several times during the day. She'd assumed he was doing work on the house. Your wife's got stamina, I'll give her that, Jules said, as we reviewed the timeline he'd put together. 3 different guys in 1 week. That's ambitious. 3? Jules looked up from his notes. Derek on Tuesday, Matt on Thursday, you on Saturday. Though from what I hear, Saturday's becoming optional. The humiliation burned worse than the betrayal. Bad enough that she was cheating, but to learn I'd been scheduled into her rotation like a dental cleaning was almost too much to bear. But the worst discovery came when Jules showed me photos from Derek's company Christmas party, the one Melissa had insisted I skip because it was just work people, you'd be bored. There she was, laughing at Derek's jokes, her hand on his arm, looking at him the way she used to look at me. And in the background, talking to other gym employees, was Matt. Both her lovers at the same party, probably planning their schedules, dividing up their time with my wife like she was a timeshare. They all know, I said, staring at the photos. Everyone at that party knows what's going on. Looks that way, Jules agreed. Your wife's not exactly being subtle. That night, I sat in my kitchen again, but this time I wasn't drinking scotch. I was stone cold sober, thinking clearly for the first time in months. Melissa was upstairs, probably texting one of her boyfriends, planning her next rendezvous. She thought I was stupid. They all did. Time to prove them wrong. I started with small changes. Instead of asking where she'd been when she came home late, I just nodded and went back to whatever I was doing. When she made excuses about working late or having dinner with girlfriends, I said, okay, and didn't ask follow-up questions. The lack of jealousy confused her. She'd been prepared for suspicion, ready with elaborate lies and defensive anger. My indifference threw her off balance. You seem different lately, she said one morning over breakfast. More distant. Just focused on work, I replied, not looking up from my newspaper. You know how it is. I have priorities. Something flickered in her eyes at that word. Priorities. The same word she'd used in her texts to Derek, talking about how I was no longer one of hers. We should talk more, she said. Spend time together. Sure, when your schedule opens up. She left for work, looking troubled, and I allowed myself a small smile. Phase 1 of my plan was working. Keep her off balance, make her wonder what I was thinking, what I knew. Meanwhile, Jules and I continued our surveillance. We learned Derek's patterns. He always parked on the 3rd level of the hotel garage, always used the side entrance, always paid cash for drinks at the bar afterward. We learned Matt's routine, too. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons when I was usually out on jobs, always entering through our back gate to avoid the neighbors. But I wasn't just gathering information. I was preparing. See, I'd realized something during those long nights of planning. I didn't want to just expose Melissa's affairs. Any husband could do that. Take photos, hire a lawyer, file for divorce, split the assets. That was thinking small. I wanted something bigger. I wanted to destroy the entire web of lies she'd built, turn her lovers against each other, watch her perfect little world collapse from the inside out. I wanted revenge, and I knew exactly how to get it. The beauty of a good plan is in its simplicity. Complex schemes have too many moving parts, too many ways to fail. But a simple plan, executed perfectly, can bring down empires. My plan was very simple. I started by becoming the husband Melissa thought she wanted. Supportive, trusting, completely oblivious to her double life. When she said she had to work late, I offered to pick up dinner from her favorite restaurant. When she mentioned Derek was stressed about quarterly reports, I suggested she should be extra supportive, maybe take him out for drinks to discuss strategy. "That's sweet of you," she said, looking genuinely surprised. Most husbands would be jealous of their wives spending so much time with their male boss. "I trust you completely," I replied, and meant every word. I trusted her to be exactly who she'd revealed herself to be, a liar, a cheater, and someone who thought she was smarter than everyone around her. The trust thing worked like a charm. Within a week, Melissa became careless again. She stopped hiding her phone, stopped making up elaborate alibis, stopped worrying about lipstick on her collar or cologne on her clothes. She thought she'd trained me to be the perfect oblivious husband. She had no idea she was training herself to be the perfect target. While Melissa got comfortable, I got busy. Jules helped me set up surveillance equipment. Nothing illegal, just cameras pointed at public spaces where my wife and her lovers liked to meet. The hotel parking garage, the coffee shop near Matt's apartment, the restaurant where Derek took her for their business dinners. I also started building relationships. Real ones, not the fake friendship I'd had with Matt before I knew he was screwing my wife. I made a point of talking to him whenever I saw him outside, asking about his work, his motorcycle, his plans for the weekend. "You're lucky to have such a dedicated wife," he said one Saturday afternoon as we both worked in our front yards. "Melissa's always talking about her fitness clients, how much she cares about helping people reach their goals." "She's very dedicated," I agreed. "Sometimes I think she cares more about her work than anything else in her life." Matt laughed, not catching the edge in my voice. "Well, that's what makes her so good at what she does. She gives 100% to everything." "Everything and everyone," I said, letting him interpret that however he wanted. I had similar conversations with Derek when I stopped by the gym to surprise Melissa with lunch. He was easier to read than Matt. Older, more arrogant, the kind of guy who thought he was entitled to whatever he wanted just because he could afford it. "Rick, good to see you," he said, shaking my hand with that firm grip meant to establish dominance. "Melissa's told me so much about you. The home renovation business, right? Must be satisfying working with your hands." The condescension was thick enough to cut with a knife. In Derek's world, people like me were hired help, blue-collar workers who fixed things for people like him. The fact that I owned my own business, employed 6 people, and probably had more real-world skills in my pinky finger than he had in his whole body didn't register. "Very satisfying," I said. "I specialize in fixing things that are broken. Sometimes the damage is obvious, sometimes it's hidden behind the walls, but there's always a way to make things right." Derek nodded absently, already looking past me toward his office. "Well, I better let you 2 lovebirds have your lunch. Melissa, don't forget about our strategy session tonight." "Strategy session?" I asked after Derek walked away. "Just boring business stuff," Melissa said, not meeting my eyes. "Budget planning, staff evaluations, you know." "Sounds important. You should definitely give it your full attention." That night, while Melissa was at her strategy session, I sat in my home office and finalized my preparations. I had everything I needed: photos of Melissa with both men, copies of their text conversations, documentation of their meeting places and times, even audio recordings from a few of their public encounters. But information was just ammunition. The real weapon was psychology. See, Derek and Matt didn't just share my wife, they shared an ego problem. Both of them thought they were God's gift to women. Both believed they were irresistible. Both assumed they were the only one having an affair with the married fitness instructor. Neither of them knew about the other. And that ignorance was going to destroy them both. I started with Matt because he was younger and cockier and more likely to do something stupid when he found out he wasn't as special as he thought. I created an anonymous email account and sent him a simple message. Thought you should know, you're not the only one. Derek Morrison, blue BMW, license plate 7G4HX9. Check the Grandview Hotel, room 412, Tuesday nights. She's playing you both. No signature, no demands, just information and an invitation to verify it himself. Then I waited. Matt's motorcycle was in my driveway the next afternoon, Thursday, his regular day with Melissa. But instead of his usual cocky wave when he saw me in the garage, he looked tense, distracted. Through my kitchen window, I watched him and Melissa talking in the backyard. His body language was aggressive, hers defensive. The conversation didn't last long. Matt left after 20 minutes instead of his usual 2 hours, and Melissa came inside looking shaken. "Everything okay?" I asked, looking up from the cabinet door I was sanding. "Fine," she said quickly. "Matt was just asking about Derek. Whether I thought Derek was trustworthy, that kind of thing." "Trustworthy how?" "I don't know. Guy stuff, I guess. You know how men get competitive about stupid things." I knew exactly how men got competitive, especially when they found out they weren't as exclusive as they thought. "Did you tell him Derek was trustworthy?" Melissa hesitated. "I told him Derek was my boss, and I didn't want to get involved in whatever was bothering him." Smart answer. Non-committal, professional, designed to avoid taking sides in a conflict she didn't fully understand yet. But it wouldn't matter. The seed was planted, and Matt's ego would do the rest. Sure enough, Jules called me Tuesday night with an update from his contact at the Grandview Hotel. "Your boy Matt showed up around 9, Jules reported. "Waited in the lobby, watched Derek and your wife go up to their room. Hotel security had to escort him out when he started making a scene at the front desk." "What kind of scene?" "Demanding to know who was in room 412, threatening to call the guy's wife, that sort of thing. Nothing violent, but loud enough that other guests complained." Perfect. Matt now knew for certain that Derek was sleeping with Melissa. He'd seen them together, had his worst suspicions confirmed. His pride was wounded, his territory invaded, his exclusive relationship revealed as a lie. Now it was Derek's turn. I sent Derek an email from a different anonymous account, this one with a more professional tone. "Mr. Morrison, I thought you should be aware that one of your employees, Melissa Sullivan, is involved in an inappropriate relationship with a client. The attached photos were taken at various times over the past month. As a business owner myself, I know you'd want to address this situation before it becomes a liability for your company." I attached photos of Melissa and Matt together, entering his apartment, kissing in his driveway, having what looked like an intimate conversation in a coffee shop. Nothing explicit, but clearly romantic. Then I sat back and waited for the fireworks to begin. Derek's response was swift and predictable. The next morning, Melissa came home from work early, her face flushed with anger and humiliation. "We need to talk," she announced, storming into the kitchen where I was eating lunch. "Sure," I said, not looking up from my sandwich. "What's on your mind?" "Derek fired me." I paused mid-chew, letting the shock register on my face. "What? Why?" "He said someone sent him photos of me with Matt. Anonymous emails claiming I was having an inappropriate relationship with a gym client." She was pacing now, her hands shaking with rage. "Can you believe that? Some sick person is stalking me, taking pictures, trying to ruin my career. That's terrible, I said, injecting just the right amount of concern into my voice. What kind of photos? Nothing inappropriate. Just us talking, having coffee. Matt's been helping me with some personal training techniques. It's completely professional. The lie came so easily, so smoothly, that I almost admired her skill. Even caught red-handed, she was still trying to control the narrative. Did you tell Derek that? Of course I did. But he said the photos looked compromising, and that the gym couldn't risk any appearance of impropriety. He said I was a liability. Her voice cracked on the last word. Rick, I loved that job. I was good at it. And now some psycho with a camera has destroyed everything. I stood up and put my arms around her, feeling her body shake with genuine emotion. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. We'll figure this out, I said. Maybe you can find another position, somewhere that appreciates your skills. She pulled back, looking at me with desperate hope. You're not angry? About the photos, I mean? Even though there's nothing going on, I know how it must look. I trust you, I said simply. If you say it was professional, then it was professional. The relief on her face was heartbreaking. She thought she still had me fooled, thought her marriage was safe even if her career was in ruins. She had no idea the worst was yet to come. That afternoon, while Melissa was upstairs making phone calls to potential employers, Matt showed up at my front door. He looked like hell, unshaven, red-eyed, wearing the same clothes he'd had on yesterday. Rick, we need to talk, he said, pushing past me into the living room. Sure, come on in, I said mildly. You look upset. Everything okay? It's about Melissa. What about her? Matt ran his hands through his hair, clearly struggling with how much to reveal. Look, I don't know how to say this, but your wife has been lying to you about a lot of things. I sat down heavily, like the words had hit me physically. What do you mean? She's been... God, this is hard. She's been having an affair, Rick, with her boss, Derek Morrison. I have proof. Proof? Matt pulled out his phone and showed me photos, grainy shots he'd obviously taken from his car, showing Derek and Melissa entering the hotel together, holding hands in the parking garage, kissing by Derek's BMW. I hired a private investigator, Matt lied smoothly. I've been suspicious for weeks that something was going on at that gym. Too many late nights, too many private meetings. I thought maybe she was embezzling money or something, but this is worse. The performance was almost convincing. Matt had cast himself as the concerned neighbor, the loyal friend who'd uncovered his buddy's wife's betrayal. He'd completely edited out his own role in the story. I don't understand, I said, staring at the photos with what I hoped looked like shock. Why would you hire a private investigator to follow my wife? Matt's face reddened. Because I care about you, man. You're a good guy. You deserve better than this. I could see something was wrong, the way she'd been acting lately, and I thought you should know the truth. The truth, I repeated slowly. And you're sure these photos are real? This isn't some kind of mistake? I wish it was. But Rick, there's more. The investigator says this has been going on for months. Hotel records, restaurant receipts, the whole thing. She's been living a double life. I stood up abruptly, walked to the window, made a show of trying to process this information. In the reflection, I could see Matt watching me, probably wondering if I was going to break down, or explode, or throw him out. I need some air, I said finally. This is a lot to take in. Of course. Take all the time you need, and Rick, I'm really sorry. I know this isn't easy to hear. After Matt left, I called Jules with an update. Phase 2 complete, I reported. Matt just played the concerned friend, showed me photos of Melissa and Derek together, claimed he hired a PI because he was worried about me. Jules chuckled. Kid's got balls, I'll give him that. So what's next? Now I wait for Derek to make his move. Matt's going to be pissed that his grand revelation didn't get the reaction he wanted. He expected me to thank him, maybe ask for his help dealing with the situation. Instead, I just looked confused and hurt. You think he'll escalate? I'm counting on it. Matt's ego can't handle being ignored. He'll do something stupid, and when he does, Derek will find out about his relationship with Melissa. I didn't have to wait long. That evening, while Melissa was in the shower, her phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it casually, a habit she'd gotten used to, since I'd been so trusting lately. The message was from Matt. We need to talk. Now. Derek isn't the only problem. 20 minutes later, Melissa came downstairs dressed to go out. I need to run an errand, she said, grabbing her keys. Won't be long? Okay, drive safe. She gave me a strange look, probably expecting questions about where she was going so late, or offers to come with her. My continued indifference was clearly unsettling. After she left, I followed at a distance, staying far enough back to avoid detection. She drove to the parking lot behind Matt's apartment complex, where his motorcycle was waiting. Even from across the street, I could see the argument was heated. Melissa's body language was defensive, Matt's aggressive. At one point, he grabbed her arm and she jerked away from him. The conversation lasted about 10 minutes before Melissa got back in her car and drove off. Matt stood in the parking lot for a long time after she left, staring at his phone. The next morning, Derek Morrison got another anonymous email. This one contained photos of the parking lot confrontation, along with a simple message. Thought you should know. Your former employee is still in contact with her client. Attached photos taken last night. Looks like your firing didn't solve the problem. By noon, Jules' contact at the gym reported that Derek had shown up looking furious, demanding to speak with Matt Hendricks. The conversation had taken place in Derek's office, behind closed doors, but the shouting could be heard throughout the building. Matt was banned from the gym permanently. Derek threatened legal action if Matt came near the property or contacted any elite fitness employees. The war had begun. That evening, Melissa got phone calls from both men. I could only hear her side of the conversations, but the pattern was clear. Derek was angry that she was still seeing Matt. Matt was angry that Derek had gotten him banned from the gym, and both of them were demanding she choose sides. I can't deal with this right now, she said into the phone during what sounded like the third or fourth call. My husband is already suspicious. I lost my job, and now you two are acting like children fighting over a toy. She hung up and immediately turned the phone off. Problems? I asked from the doorway. She spun around, startled. God, Rick, you scared me. No, just work stuff. Former work stuff. Derek's being difficult about my final paycheck. Want me to call him? Sometimes these business disputes go better when it's man to man. The panic in her eyes was immediate and unmistakable. No, no thank you. I can handle it myself. It's not that big a deal. But it was a big deal. Her carefully compartmentalized life was collapsing. Her lovers were at war with each other, and she was caught in the middle with no good options. And I was just getting started. The end came faster than I expected, but exactly as I'd planned. 3 days after Derek banned Matt from the gym, Matt showed up at Derek's office building. Jules's contact in building security said Matt waited in the parking garage for 2 hours before Derek came down to his car. The confrontation was brief, but decisive. Matt accused Derek of stealing his girlfriend. Derek accused Matt of harassment and stalking. Voices were raised, threats were made, and security had to separate them before it got physical. But the damage was done. Derek now knew that Matt considered Melissa his girlfriend, not just a casual hookup. Matt now knew that Derek thought he had exclusive rights to my wife. Both of them realized they'd been played. That night, Melissa came home looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Her phone had been ringing constantly. I could hear it buzzing in her purse even though she kept declining the calls. Rough day? I asked, looking up from the cabinet I was refinishing in the garage. You could say that. She sat down heavily on my workbench, suddenly looking older than her 41 years. Rick, I need to tell you something. Here it comes, I thought. The confession, the tears, the plea for forgiveness. I'm listening, I said, setting down my sandpaper. Derek and Matt, they've been fighting. About me. And I think they might say things to you. Lies, to try to hurt me. Interesting approach. Get ahead of the story. Frame their revelations as lies motivated by spite. What kind of lies? They might claim I was having relationships with them. Both of them. She was watching my face carefully, gauging my reaction. It's not true, obviously, but they're both angry about losing access to the gym, and they blame me. Why would they blame you? Because I was the one who recommended Matt for a membership, and I was the one working with Derek on the new client retention program. When that anonymous person sent those photos, it made everyone look bad. The lies were getting more elaborate, more desperate. She was trying to rewrite history, make herself the victim of circumstances beyond her control. So you're saying Derek and Matt might contact me, claiming you had affairs with them, but they'd be lying? Exactly. The relief in her voice was palpable. I know it sounds crazy, but men get weird when their egos are bruised. They might even have fake evidence, doctored photos, made-up text messages, that kind of thing. That does sound crazy, I agreed. Good thing I know you better than that. She smiled for the first time in days. Thank you for trusting me. I know this whole situation is bizarre, but it'll blow over soon. These guys will find something else to focus on, and we can get back to normal. Normal. As if there was any going back to the way things were. That night, I made my final moves. First, I sent Derek an email from Melissa's account. I'd figured out her password weeks ago, same one she used for everything. The message was simple. Derek, I've decided to be honest with my husband about us. He deserves to know the truth. I'm telling him everything tomorrow night. M. Then I sent Matt a text from her phone. Matt, I can't keep lying to Rick. I'm going to tell him about our relationship. I think he already suspects something anyway. Sorry, but it's time. Melissa. Both messages were sent with delayed delivery, time to arrive the next evening at 6 p.m. Then I waited. The next day passed normally. Melissa made job-hunting phone calls. I worked on a kitchen renovation in Riverside. We had dinner together and watched TV like a regular married couple. At exactly 6:01 p.m., Melissa's phone started ringing. Derek's name appeared on the screen. She looked at it with confusion, then declined the call. 30 seconds later, Matt's name appeared. She declined that one too. Then the text messages started coming in rapid succession. Derek, what the hell is wrong with you? You can't tell him. Matt, are you insane? We agreed to keep this quiet. Derek, call me back right now or I'm coming over there. Matt, don't do anything stupid, Melissa. We need to talk first. I watched my wife's face go white as she read the messages, her hands shaking as more kept arriving. Problems? I asked casually. I don't understand. They're acting like... She stopped, realizing she was about to incriminate herself. Acting like what? Her phone rang again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize. Probably Derek calling from his office line. She declined it, but immediately got a voicemail notification. Without thinking, she played the message on speaker. Derek's voice filled the room. Melissa, what the hell are you thinking? You can't tell Rick about us. It'll ruin everything. My wife, my business, your reputation. Think about what you're doing. Call me back immediately so we can figure this out. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at my wife, who was staring at her phone like it had turned into a poisonous snake. Interesting message, I said quietly. Tell me about what, exactly? Before she could answer, the phone rang again. Matt this time. Against her better judgment, or maybe because she was too shocked to think clearly, she answered it. Matt, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb. Matt's voice was loud enough for me to hear clearly. You sent me a text saying you were going to tell Rick about us, about our relationship. Are you trying to destroy both our lives? Melissa's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. She looked like a fish drowning in air. I reached over and took the phone from her numb fingers. Hello, Matt, I said calmly. This is Rick. Why don't you tell me about this relationship you're so worried about? The line went dead immediately. I handed the phone back to my wife, who was now crying silently. So, I said, settling back in my chair. Derek and Matt, how long? The confession came out in pieces, between sobs and desperate attempts to minimize the damage. 4 months with Derek, 6 months with Matt. It started innocently, she claimed. Derek offering career advice, Matt helping with her fitness routine. But it escalated, became physical, became emotional. I never meant for it to happen, she said, the words tumbling out between tears. I was lonely, you were always working, and they made me feel special, appreciated. Special enough to schedule them on different days so they wouldn't find out about each other? She looked up sharply. How did you… Derek on Tuesdays and Fridays, Matt on Thursdays and Sundays. Very organized, very efficient. The realization was dawning on her face. You knew. You've known all along. I've known for 2 weeks. I've suspected for months. Then why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you confront me? I stood up, walked to my desk, and pulled out a thick folder. Inside were printed copies of text messages, hotel receipts, photographs, a complete timeline of her affairs. Because I wanted to see how far you'd go, how many lies you'd tell, how long you'd keep treating me like an idiot. She flipped through the evidence, her face growing paler with each page. The anonymous emails, she whispered. The photos that got me fired. That was you. That was me. You destroyed my career. You turned Derek and Matt against each other. You orchestrated all of this. I did. She looked up at me with something I'd never seen in her eyes before. Fear. What do you want, Rick? Money? The house? What's it going to take to end this? I sat back down, studied her face for a long moment. 6 months ago, I would have done anything to make her happy. I would have forgiven the affairs, gone to counseling, tried to rebuild our marriage. But that was before I learned who she really was. Before I discovered that the woman I'd loved for 15 years saw me as a joke, a convenient fool who paid the bills while she lived her real life with other men. Remember what you told Derek in that text last month? About how I was no longer at the center of your life? How you had other priorities? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. And remember what I said back? You said that was my choice. That's right. It was your choice. And this is mine. I stood up again, walked to the window, looked out at the neighborhood where we'd built our life together. I want you to leave, Melissa. Tonight. Go stay with Derek or Matt. Oh, wait. They're both furious with you right now, aren't they? Maybe you can find a hotel. I hear the Grandview has nice rooms. Rick, please. I want you out of my house, out of my business. Yes, you're fired from the company too, and out of my life. You can have your lawyer contact mine about the divorce. I think you'll find I'm prepared to be very generous, considering the circumstances. She was sobbing now, desperate, grasping for anything that might change my mind. I'll end it with them, both of them. We can start over, go to counseling, work through this. No, I said simply. We can't. Because you're not the woman I married, Melissa. That woman died somewhere along the way, and I'm not interested in getting to know who replaced her. The front door slammed 20 minutes later. Through the window, I watched my wife load 2 suitcases into her car and drive away into the night. I poured myself a scotch and sat back down in my kitchen, listening to the silence of my empty house. For the first time in months, the quiet felt peaceful instead of lonely. My phone buzzed with a text from Jules. Heard through the grapevine that Derek's wife found out about the affair. Apparently someone sent her copies of those hotel receipts. Divorce papers were served this morning. I smiled and typed back. Interesting. Any word on Matt? Landlord's evicting him. Seems like someone reported him for running an unlicensed personal training business out of his apartment. Violation of his lease agreement. Shame, I replied. Guess he'll have to find a new neighborhood. I finished my drink and headed upstairs to bed. Tomorrow I'd start the process of rebuilding my life, figuring out who Rick Sullivan was when he wasn't being played for a fool by his cheating wife. But tonight, I was content to savor the silence and the satisfaction of a job well done. They'd called me stupid, treated me like a joke, laughed about how easy I was to deceive. Turns out they were wrong about a lot of things,